everyone, and good evening. Welcome to the Linglobe channel. This time, we'll be bringing you content about preserving the world's languages for the future. Please enjoy it to the end.
Welcome to Linglove Voice. So imagine for a second that you're navigating this incredibly vast, lethal ocean of sand.
Yeah, an ocean with no roads and no borders.
Right, exactly. Where your survival, it entirely depends on things like improvised poetry or, highly tactical games.
And even the chemical properties of the actual clothes on your back.
Yes, it's wild. So today we're exploring the Linglove materials to really understand the incredible engineering of Tuareg culture and heritage.
It's a fascinating presentation.
It really is. And it just wastes no time, throwing us right into this harsh environment with the very first slide, which is titled Guardians of the Desert.
Right, the visual there is striking.
Yeah, it's just this lone figure standing against an endless expanse of sunlit dunes. It completely contextualizes everything we're about to discuss.
It really is the perfect visual anchor. Because you can't understand the Tuareg people without first understanding the absolute extremes of the Sahara. Every single cultural quirk, every linguistic anomaly, it's an engineered adaptation. And the most famous of those adaptations is introduced in the very next slide, titled The Blue People of the Sahara.
Right, the blue people.
Yeah, so the Linglove materials highlight their identity as a semi-nomadic Berber group, but what catches the eye is that moniker. And it's not genetic. It comes from their vibrant indigo-dyed garments staining their skin.
See, okay, here's what I wanted to ask about that, because if a dye is constantly rubbing off on my skin, my first instinct is, well, that's just a cheap dye job.
Sure, that makes sense.
Like, why wouldn't they just wash it out or set the dye permanently?
Well, think about the mechanics of the environment there. Setting a dye permanently requires boiling the fabric in massive vats of water.
Oh, right.
And in the Central Sahara, water is your most precious, heavily guarded resource. You don't waste it on textiles.
That's a really good point.
So instead, they traditionally pound the dry indigo pigment directly into the cloth fibers using rocks.
Just dry pounding it in.
Exactly. And because it isn't washed in, the raw pigment sits heavily on the surface and naturally transfers to their skin. But the brilliant part is that the indigo actually acts as a natural sunblock.
Wait, really?
Yeah, and it's a mild astringent for the skin and even an effective insect repellent.
Okay, that completely changes how I view this. I mean, wearing those garments, it's like you are quite literally wearing your survival technology on your sleeve.
It's a great way to put it.
The stain is this indelible mark of your relationship with the desert, which naturally means understanding exactly where you roam to survive.
It does.
And that brings us to the next slide, titled A Transnational Nomadic Expanse.
Yes, the geography of the Tuareg.
Because when you look at the provided map of Tuareg communities in the Linglove materials, they sprawl across 5 modern nations: Mali, Niger, Algeria, Libya, and Burkina Faso. They completely ignore modern political borders.
They do.
Which makes sense, because those borders are largely just, 20th century European inventions drawn on paper, right?
Exactly. Their geography is entirely fluid.
Like, you can't put a border checkpoint on a seasonal weather pattern.
Precisely. It's dictated by ecological necessity rather than political sovereignty. They follow the rain and the economic opportunities.
Just like their ancestors did centuries before those 5 nations even existed.
Right. And this absolute freedom of movement, combined with this unmatched geographic memory, is exactly what allowed them to monopolize the region's economy.
Which takes us right into the mechanics of that economy, detailed in our next slide, titled Masters of the Transaharan Trade.
A crucial part of their history.
The Linglove presentation details how their ancestors, the ancient Saharan Berbers, basically controlled the flow of precious commodities like salt and gold.
Yes, across the Trans-Saharan network.
But okay, let's unpack this for a second. We usually think of global trade happening in these big port cities with massive galleons, but here the desert itself was the ocean they navigated.
That analogy is spot on. To an outsider, the deep Sahara is just a lethal, impassable void.
Just totally unnavigable.
Right. But to the Tuareg, it was a highly navigable highway, They knew exactly where the hidden wells were.
And they could navigate by the shifting winds and the stars.
Exactly. So they essentially controlled the toll booths of the whole Trans-Saharan network. If you wanted to move gold from West Africa up to the Mediterranean, you had to play by Tuareg rules.
That is incredible. And I guess surviving the logistics of that brutal sandy ocean fundamentally altered the social rules of their society, didn't it?
It did, and it's this fascinating sociological inversion explored in our next slide, titled A Unique Societal Tapestry.
I loved this part of the Linglove materials.
It's so striking, because when you look at the broader picture of conservative neighboring cultures in that region, the Tuaregs stand out sharply. For one, it is the men who wear the veil. The Tegel must, not the women.
Let's stop right there because that completely flips the expected script. Why are the men the ones veiling?
Well, mechanically, the men are the ones undertaking those brutal weeks-long caravan journeys through blinding dust storms.
Oh, so it's vital physical protection.
Yes, but culturally, it also acts as a spiritual shield. The deep desert is believed to be inhabited by volatile spirits, and the veil protects the wearer's vital essence.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and perhaps more interestingly, the society maintains incredibly strong matrilineal elements. Women traditionally own the tent and the property.
So wait, if there is a divorce, the man essentially just takes his camel and leaves.
Pretty much, yes. The woman keeps the home and the children.
That creates this incredible social stability, doesn't it? The men are out orbiting this chaotic, lethal desert, while the women act as the fixed gravitational center of the community and the lineage.
Exactly. The woman's primary authority within the domestic sphere is absolute.
Which is just so pragmatic, and this highly pragmatic, survival-first approach to society weaves its way directly into their highly unique spiritual worldview, which is covered on the next slide, titled Sunni Islam Meets Ancestral Spirit.
Yes, the Linglove materials describe this really seamless blending of formally practiced Sunni Islam with deeply rooted animist traditions and ancestral beliefs.
And I found this synthesis really clever. You have Islam, which provides this macro-level unifying framework.
Right, a shared legal and communal structure with the wider Islamic world.
Exactly. But I guess my question is, how do these ancient traditions specifically adapt to the silences and mysteries of the Sahara? Like, if you're out in the dunes and your well runs dry, a macro-religion might feel a bit abstract.
That is exactly where the ancient animist roots activate. The desert is an environment of extreme isolation and extreme quiet. You need a spiritual practice that addresses those immediate, localized mysteries.
Right, the day-to-day survival stuff.
Exactly. So while they observe Islamic prayers, their daily survival rituals might involve, say, making specific geometric amulets to ward off the jinns of the sand.
Or performing ancestral rituals to divine where the water is.
Precisely. It's a localized spiritual rhythm, and that spiritual rhythm finds its most profound expression in their art, which brings us to the next slide, titled The Melodies of Survival.
Music is so huge here.
It is the acoustic foundation of their society. The presentation highlights the imzad, which is a traditional single-stringed instrument. But the crucial mechanism here is that the imzad is played exclusively by women.
Ah, which ties perfectly back to what we just discussed about women being the anchors of the culture.
Exactly.
They literally set the rhythm and the tone for the community's history, accompanying the recitation of ancient poetry.
They do. And the Linglove materials also point to the modern evolution of this acoustic foundation, known as desert blues.
Oh, like the band Tanariwen.
Yes. Bands like Tanariwen have electrified these ancient nomadic melodies, blending traditional poetic longing with modern guitars.
That's so cool.
But whether it's an acoustic imzad or an electric guitar, the music isn't just entertainment. In a landscape that can swallow you whole, music serves as an acoustic foundation for their survival and storytelling.
It's a defiant broadcast of their existence. And that defiance, their survival, it's also broadcast visually, bringing us to their flags and colors on the next slide, titled Emblems of the Free People.
Visual identity is very important.
We talked about the indigo and the white fabrics communicating maturity and protection, but the Linglove presentation zeroes in on this one crucial symbol, the yaz.
Yes, the yaz.
It's from the Tifinagh script, right?
That's right. It is a central, prominent letter from their indigenous alphabet, and it literally represents the free man, or the Amazigh.
You see it everywhere.
You do. It's incorporated into the Azawad tricolor flags used in modern autonomy movements painted on walls worn as jewelry.
I look at the Yaz almost like a nomadic coat of arms.
How so?
Well, when you are a people constantly on the move, you don't have giant stone monuments or fixed capital cities to point to as proof of your existence. So a symbol like the Yaz becomes this powerful, portable visual anchor.
Oh, I see.
Like you can carry your entire national identity on a silver pendant.
That is a profound way to look at it. And the Yaz is just one letter of a much larger, incredible linguistic puzzle, which is explored in our next slide, titled Tamasheq, the voice of the Tuareg.
Their spoken language.
Yes, the Tamasheq language. It is rich in incredibly complex consonants, and the Linglove materials note that its elaborate phrasing is perfectly suited for desert metaphors.
Which makes sense. You needed an incredibly granular, specific vocabulary when your life literally depends on communicating the exact texture of the sand or a subtle shift in the wind to your caravan.
You really do.
Yeah.
But the truly remarkable mechanism of Tamasheq, and what I want to focus on, is its regional cohesion.
Regional cohesion?
Yeah. You have Tuareg communities spread across thousands of miles of hostile, disjointed terrain. Yet the regional dialects remain remarkably mutually intelligible despite those vast geographical distances.
See, that feels like a total paradox to me. Usually when populations are spread out over vast distances, separated by mountains or whatever, their languages drift apart within a few generations. How does Tamasheq stay so cohesive?
It comes back to those trade routes. Because they are a highly mobile, nomadic culture constantly moving along these Trans-Saharan highways, they aren't isolated in static pockets.
Oh, I get it.
The constant intermingling at oases and trade hubs acts as a linguistic stabilizer.
They're like a circulating bloodstream, constantly refreshing the language. And this bloodstream carries some incredibly ancient DNA, which brings us to the next slide, titled Echoes of Antiquity.
Exactly. Tamasheq derives directly from ancient Berber.
It acts as a living linguistic artifact.
It successfully retains archaic grammar and vocabularies that have been completely overridden or lost in neighboring, more settled regions.
And here is where it gets really interesting to me, kind of a fascinating paradox, because physical records, like paper or parchment, would just blow away in the sand or get shredded, so they were forced to build an unbreakable chain of oral history instead.
Right. The oral tradition is paramount.
They used metaphor as the ultimate mnemonic device. You might forget a dry list of directions to a well, but you won't forget a vivid, poetic metaphor about a camel chasing a specific star.
Exactly. The poetry is actually an encrypted survival manual,
Yeah.
but I will counter that by pointing out that while oral history does the heavy lifting, they do possess an ancient written component. And the Linglove materials detail this on the next slide, titled Tifinagh, the ancient script.
This is the alphabet that gives us the Yaz symbol.
Yes. Tifinagh traces its roots back to pre-Islamic antiquity, with heavy structural influences from ancient Phoenicians.
Visually, it is fascinating. It's incredibly geometric, composed of these very sharp, angular lines, crosses, and dotted circles.
And the reason it is so geometric is purely technological. If you don't have paper or smooth ink and you are carving your alphabet directly into hard rocks or sewing it into thick leather, you can't easily make sweeping cursive loops.
Oh, right. Sharp angles and straight lines are a technological necessity of the medium. The environment literally shaped the font.
It did. And I want to emphasize the rarity of Tifinagh. It stands today as one of the very few indigenous African scripts in continuous, active use across multiple nations.
It's amazing. Well, let's bring that ancient language to life by looking at some everyday words, which brings us to a great breakdown in the next slide titled Words of the Nomad.
Yes, the vocabulary sheet.
The Linglove materials provide some specific Tamasheq vocabulary, specifically focusing on two words, azul for hello and tanamirt for thank you.
Right.
But I really want to hone in on the literal translation provided for azul because it translates to approaching the heart.
Yes, approaching the heart.
I just think that is so beautifully sincere for a nomadic greeting because the mechanics of a desert greeting are intense. Running into an unfamiliar group in the middle of the vast, lawless Sahara is an inherently dangerous, high-stakes encounter.
It's very dangerous. You have to quickly assess if they are a threat.
Right. So leading with a phrase that literally means approaching the heart is this incredibly vulnerable de-escalation. It establishes immediate, sincere trust.
It's a verbal lowering of weapons. It acknowledges the shared vulnerability of just existing in that landscape. But, language isn't just used for survival and warm greetings. It's intricately tied to how they play and compete, which we see on the next slide titled Play in the Sand. traditional games.
Oh, this is a fun section.
The materials highlight a few of these. You have Ahalaf, which is high-speed camel racing, but then you have these smaller ground-level games like Tywin, a bone-throwing game, and Tabra, which involves stone kicking.
Yeah, pebble and bone games.
But we shouldn't view these merely as idle pastimes. They are rigorous strategic exercises.
How so?
Well, games like Tywin are designed specifically to hone the tactical thinking necessary for desert survival. When you play a game where you manage limited pebbles and anticipate opponent moves, you're learning resource management. You're learning to calculate odds when water and pasture are scarce.
You are literally playing with the mechanics of survival, which perfectly bridges us to the ultimate game, one that combines this tactful warfare with their absolute mastery of language. And that is the subject of our next slide, titled Imednas, the Duel of Words.
The Imednas is where everything we've discussed, the poetry, the intellect, the survival tactics, brilliantly intersects.
The Linglove materials explain it as a traditional, improvised poetry duel. Two poets challenge each other with rapidly delivered, spontaneous verses.
Often around a campfire, yes.
It's basically a high-stakes campfire rap battle,
It really is.
where words are wielded like literal blades.
I completely agree. It's an exercise in intellectual agility under extreme pressure.
Yeah.
You have to anticipate your opponent's rhyme, parry their metaphor, and strike back with a sharper observation.
All in real time.
Yes, because the underlying philosophy is that if you can outwit an opponent in verse, you possess the mental agility required to negotiate a complex trade deal or navigate a crisis in the deep desert. It proves your fitness to lead.
It's the ultimate test of the free man.
It does. Which brings us to the synthesis of this entire journey on our final slide, titled Guardians of a Desert Civilization.
The perfect summary.
When we step back and synthesize the entirety of the Linglove materials, we see a people who have engineered a masterpiece of human resilience. The Tuareg embodies a profound dignity in the face of an unforgiving landscape. They are anchored by a language that relies on ancient geometric symbols, a society where women hold the center while men navigate the storms, and an enduring freedom that refuses to be boxed in by modern borders.
Yeah.
They remain the unwavering guardians of a civilization that survives by turning the harsh realities of the desert into poetry.
To you, the listener, we hope this exploration of the Linglove materials was as deeply fascinating for you as it was for us. Thank you.
Thank you for watching until the end. We will continue to bring you many more languages from around the world. Please subscribe to our channel. See you next time on the Linglove channel.